Hello, my name is Evelyn Green, the lead pool inspector with the City of Wichita. In this presentation, I'll be going over how to maintain a pool either semi-public or public in accordance with city guidelines. I'm going to go over the following topics: pool operator responsibilities, disinfection, facility maintenance, the risks associated with aquatics, good pool operating practices, pool water illnesses, non-fecal and fecal-related and vomit accidents, daily pool record maintenance requirements, city inspections, reason for closures, and some city statistics. First off, for the pool operator responsibilities, we have maintaining water quality and chemical balance, maintain facilities, mechanical systems, and components, understanding the needs of facility maintenance, and being able to identify and evaluate aquatic risks. So starting with disinfection, it's basically the process of destroying or inactivating pathogens, which include bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites, and algae. The type of facility will influence the degree of use that the facility receives. The heavier the use, generally the more disinfectant required. Sunlight exposure can break down a disinfectant, and general outdoor facilities will require more disinfectant than indoor facilities if the use is equivalent. Bathing loads, water temperature, and source water will also influence the amount of disinfectant used. There are several disinfectant types that I'll go over shortly. You also need to be careful in storing the disinfectant chemicals. Some chemicals, especially chlorine, become less potent over time as the chlorine off-gases from the solid tablets. Chlorine tablets and powders stored on shelves for more than a year are much less potent than fresh chemicals. There are a variety of disinfectants. There's chlorine, bromine, liquid tabs, briquettes, either granular or gas disinfectants. You should be monitoring several times a day to make sure you have appropriate levels. You can use a colorimetric test that utilizes color matching for testing DPD, or the free residual disinfectant, which is freely available disinfectant in the body of water. When testing, be sure to reach at least 18 inches below the water line and away from the sides of the pools. Other methods for testing DPD include titrometric or electronic testing. Going over chlorine use for disinfectants, the regulations the city has is that the pool must be between 1 to 5 parts per million. Spas, wading pools, and water features such as splash pads should be between 2 and 5 parts per million. For all facilities, the pH should be between 7 and 8. And for alkalinity, we check to make sure it's between 80 to 180 parts per million. Going over some advantages and disadvantages of using chlorine. Some advantages are its availability. It's usually up to 40% cheaper than bromine. It can be stabilized from the sun using conditioners such as cyanuric acid. And it contains a higher percentage of available sanitizers per volume. Some of the disadvantages, however, is the chloramines are weak sanitizers and off-gas more readily. They're very ineffective at pH higher than 7.8. They need to be tested and replenished more regularly, and warm or hot water temperatures rapidly depletes chlorine. Going over bromine as a disinfectant, this is a heavy reddish-brown liquid. It has a low pH of around 4, and using bromine tablets will slowly lower your pH and alkalinity over time, requiring additions of a base chemical to raise pH and alkalinity. The same can be said for chlorine tablets, which have a pH even lower of around 3. In a sunny outdoor pool, it may burn off more quickly, since bromine is not stabilized from the sun in the same way as chlorine can be, which is why bromine is typically used for indoor pools. Some pool operators enjoy the reduced effect of disinfectant byproducts, including bromamines. Indoor pools that use chlorine may find it necessary to frequently shock the pool to reduce chloramine levels, which can foul the air and cause corrosion to metal items around the pool. Bromine is known to have a less pungent smell, even when combined with ammonia or nitrogen. Combined bromine or bromamines also remain a viable, although slightly less potent sanitizer. If you use bromine in your pools, we require that they be at 2 to 10 parts per million, and for spas, wading pools, and recreational features, from 4 to 10 parts per million. And you can use a standard chlorine testing kit. If you're testing for the DPD, you simply multiply the results by 2.25. Some advantages and disadvantages of bromine. Advantages are it can be more stable at higher temperatures than chlorine. It's more potent at higher pH levels than chlorine. Bromine can be reactivated by superchlorination, and bromamines are still active sanitizers. The disadvantages, however, is the bromine tablets are more expensive, and they're not as widely available, and they do burn off in the sun a lot quicker as well. Going over some supplemental disinfectants, these options here do not have a residual disinfectant. Therefore, we cannot test it when we do our pool inspections. So because of this, this can't be the only method of disinfecting the water, but you can have these systems in place just as a supplement. There is salt water, which is used to generate Cl2 with the addition of sodium chloride to the water. It passes through electrodes or electrochemical cells and generates free chlorine. This method is still using the chlorine as a disinfectant. It just produces it in a different way. So saltwater pools are held to the same disinfectant standards as all the other pools. Using ozone to treat the water is a very powerful oxidizer and sanitizer, and it does return to molecular oxygen, standard O2, after it's done. Going over the water balance, properly balanced water creates an environment that optimizes the disinfectant process. To determine whether a pool or spa water is properly balanced, a full water chemistry analysis is necessary, including calculating the saturation index. Saturation index is a method of determining whether water will deposit calcium carbonate or maintain it in a solution. The ideal range for balanced water is between 0.3 and negative 0.3. Going over the pH of our water balancing, the control of pH is important for the comfort of users, especially of disinfectant, and protection of pool system components. The ideal range is from 7.4 to 7.6. According to city code, you can have a pH range of between 7 to 8. More basic means it's above 8, and this can produce scaling and skin irritation. If it's below 7, it's more acidic, and this can make it more corrosive and cause staining to happen on the metals around the pool. And the pH is affected by various things, from user waste to skin oils, other kinds of disinfectants in the water, the source water, any debris or chemicals. Going over total alkalinity now. If a pool has low alkalinity, you usually have a low pH. The total alkalinity is a buffer and a measure of the ability of water to resist changes in pH. Total alkalinity is like an anchor for keeping pH where it should be. So if your pH is low, it means your alkalinity is low. If pH is high, alkalinity is probably high. The ideal range is from 80 to 120, but the city allows for the range to be 80 to 180. Total hardness is the sum of calcium and magnesium dissolved in the water. In spas, the easiest way to treat it is with water replacement, because it drops out of solution easily and is less soluble with temperature increase. Water softeners may reduce the hardness as well, or a sequestering agent may help prevent scaling. Low calcium hardness is corrosive to surface and other components and is a major source of foaming. If the calcium hardness is high, it can cause scaling, irritation, and cloudy water. As far as temperatures, when we inspect the spas and hot tubs, we do check the temperature to make sure it's not above 104 degrees. If it is, that's considered a safety violation or an imminent health risk. So you have to know the volume of your pool in order to determine how much disinfectant to use. The volumes that are put into pump rooms and the pump houses are not always right. If you need to, you can do this calculation and we'll walk through it. So the first step is to determine the surface area. And this will be simply the length times the width of your pool for a rectangular surface. And if you have a circular surface, you'll use 3.14 times radius squared. And once we have the surface area and the average depth of the pool, you can multiply that by 7.5 in order to get the gallons. So for a rectangular pool, if you have a length of 5 feet and a width of 3 feet, you simply multiply those together and you'd have a 15-foot surface area for that pool. For a multi-sided pool, you can break it up into smaller pieces. Like in this example, there is A, B, and C. You will do the length times width of each individual piece and just add it to the rest of the ones. So for A, it would be 10 times 10. For B, would be a 20 times 25. And C, a 5 times 5. and you add those up to get 625 square feet. On this slide, we have examples for calculating the gallons of a pool using that same equation. In order to calculate the average depth of the pool, you can add the shallowest end plus the deepest end and divide by 2, giving you an average depth. So if you have a shallow end at 3 feet and a deep end at 6 feet, you can add them together to get 9 and divide by 2 and have an average depth of 4.5. To calculate the volume, you'd simply calculate the length times width times depth and then multiply by 7.5 to get the gallons. To calculate for a circular spa, you take the pi r squared surface area and multiply by the average depth the same way, and again multiply by 7.5 to get it in gallons. Knowing the volume of your pool is important for calculating the turnover rate. Pools are required to have 1 turnover every 6 hours. For spas, it needs to be 30 minutes, and wading pools, 1 to 2 hours. And your pool pumps must function at a rate that meets this turnover requirement. The amount of time needed to recirculate the entire volume of the pool one time is the turnover rate. So you take the pool volume and divide it by the flow rate divided by 60 minutes, and that gives you your turnover rate in hours. Flow rate is the amount of water passing through the recirculation and filtration systems at a given time. Measured in gallons per minute, a flow meter measures flow rate. You can take the pool volume and divide it by the required turnover rate in hours, divided by 60 minutes to get the flow rate. Moving on to facility maintenance. Maintaining your pool, you'll need to have proper rescue equipment. It must be present and visible and within reach of your pool goers at all times. You need to make sure that your deck is clean and in good repair. So the pool rails and pool ladders and lights and everything, they need to be secured, not having cracks in your deck, no open holes around the pool area because they can be considered trip hazards. If you have taken a pool ladder out and you have a hole in the side of your pool, that is considered a safety hazard. So those need to be filled in. Basically, we just want to make sure that your facility is safe for the public to use. If it could be a hazard, then treat it like it is. Some of the rescue equipment that we require is shepherd's hooks and ring buoys. These need to be at your facility if you do not have lifeguards. The shepherd's hook must be a minimum of 12 feet, and the hook should always be attached. If the hook isn't attached, then it's not considered a shepherd's hook. For the ring buoy, it does need to have a rescue line attached. The rescue line needs to be the length, at least half of the longest dimension of your pool. If your facility does use lifeguards, then they need to have a rescue tube and a backboard. There needs to be a lifeguard plan on file and submitted with the city, and they need to have access to a first aid kit. No pool or spa is safe if the drain cover is broken, missing, or cracked. Pools should be closed until all repairs are made on these drain covers, and this is because of the Virginia Graham-Baker Act. In June 2002, Graham became stuck to a drain and she drowned. The intense suction from the drain kept her held underwater. Due to this act, all drains are required to have covers on them. And because of this is why we need to be able to see the drain when we do our inspections. We need to be able to see the pool floor and the pool drain clearly. Also, for safe chemical handling, chemicals need to be stored in a clean, dry place that is protected from sunlight and locked away from the reach of children. You should never be mixing chlorine with any other chemical. Always use caution and read directions printed on the labels. And be sure to keep safety data sheets of all of the chemicals that you're using. Some of the risks associated with aquatic facilities that we look for in our inspection specifically, we'll look for the control of access. So all of the fences around your facility need to be at least 60 inches tall. All gates have to be able to latch. If there is no control of access, then there needs to be pool covers. If the fence or the gate is in disrepair, like if there's a couple of missing rods or a big hole or something, any way a child or somebody could get into the pool without supervision, that would be considered an immediate health risk. We also require depth markers to be on the pools. They need to be at the minimum and maximum water depths on both sides of the pool and both ends of the pool. For spas, we need to be able to see at least one visible depth marker. And going over required signage, At all of the facilities, if you do not have lifeguards, you must have a no lifeguard sign posted. The letters do need to be at least 4 inches tall. We also require there to be on the sign saying that children less than 16 years old shall not be using the pool without adult supervision. Our city code requires as well that your facility has a sign with personal regulations posted. We do have these available if you reach out to us. Our contact information is at the end of this presentation. And we also require a caution sign for all of the spas. So going over some good pool operating practices. According to the CDC guidelines, you want to maintain proper disinfection levels at all times. You should be checking at least once a day, but the more the better. Having all children using the bathrooms before entering the swimming pools. And anybody, like babies, who can't use the bathroom should be using swim diapers. Prohibiting pool use for people with open wounds or sores or any kind of communicable infection. We don't want any swimmers who are having diarrhea. Every year, the CDC puts out a swim week. This year, it was preventing drownings. So formal swimming lessons for children can reduce the risk of drowning. Children who have had swimming lessons still need close and constant supervision when in or around water. So this goes back to anyone 16 and under needs to have adult supervision, even if they're good swimmers. Another aquatic risk is on fecal-related illnesses. We have hot tub rash, which is an inflammation of hair follicles. Swimmer's ear, which is an infection of the ear canal. Legionnaire's disease, which is a type of pneumonia. Hypersensitivity and pneumonitis is an allergic alveolitis, inflamed lung alveoli from inhaled organic dust. Methicillin is a superbug that causes difficult to treat infections resistant to antibiotics. Molosum contagiosum, plantar warts, athlete's foot, and allergic conjunctivitis, also known as pink eye. And here are some pictures of those. Moving on to some fecal-related illnesses. The biggest one is cryptosporidium. This is an infection of bacteria that burrows into the intestines. It sheds in your feces, which is how it spreads through the pool water. So this can be very fatal for people with compromised immune systems. There's Giardia, which is an intestinal infection, and Shigella, which is an intestinal disease. These are all from bacteria. There's E. coli, norovirus, adenovirus, and Hep A, and also protozoa, which are single-cell organisms. Some illnesses that you cannot contract from a swimming pool are MRSA, head lice, pinworms, and UTIs. If your pool does get contaminated material in it, always remember to be using your PPE, so rubber gloves and probably a mask, anything you need to not come into direct contact with the contaminated material. You want to remove the excess contaminants from the water, disinfect all surfaces that the contaminants touch, follow your regulatory guidelines for disposal, and make sure that you wash your hands. And also, we do not recommend that you vacuum any fecal or contaminated material because that can really spread it around. Try to remove it all as solidly as you can with a net or something. So if you have an accident involving vomit or formed stool, your response is to close the pool immediately, and you're going to want to remove as much of the material as possible, like we said, and dispose of it. You want to keep your pH between 7.2 and 7.5 and maintain a chlorine level of 2 parts per million for approximately 30 minutes. After that, you can open the pool to normal activities, but you do still need to fill out a fecal and vomit accident report and send it to us. These accident reports should be being kept with your daily records as well. If your facility has an accident with diarrhea, you also need to close the pool immediately, and you need to maintain a pH, again, between 7.2 and 7.5, and raise the chlorine to 20 parts per million. This hyperchlorination needs to be maintained for at least 8 hours. After the 8-hour time has passed, you want to backwash the filters directly to waste and remove your filter media and replace it if you can. Any accident involving diarrhea, our office needs to be notified about it. You'll still submit a fecal and vomit accident report, but we need to come to your facility and do an inspection of the water before you can reopen it to the public. So again, your fecal and vomit accident reports should be kept with your daily records so that they're easy to use. Going over your daily records now, you should be recording your chlorine and your pH daily on these forms. Many facilities use their own forms, but ours are always available. If you just reach out to us, we can send them to you digitally or bring them by at our next inspection. For our city's inspections, I'm going to be going over what we look for typically. So we're always going to inspect the access to the pool, making sure that you have the gates and the fences. Again, 60 inches tall. We're going to check the water clarity and the chemistry. Again, making sure that we can see the bottom of the pool and the drain. We'll check to make sure that the chemistry is good. Chlorine for pools, again, between 1 and 5 parts per million. And for spas and wading pools, between 2 to 5. We'll always check for proper signage. Again, if you don't use lifeguards, you have to have your no lifeguard on duty sign, as well as the personal regulations. Those are typically just the pool rules. And we're checking for depth markers and for hot tubs. Also, again, the caution sign, adequate ventilation. We want to make sure that there's no condensation around your hot tub. We'll always check for life-saving equipment. Again, without lifeguards, you need to have a shepherd's crook and the ring buoy. If you do have lifeguards, you need to have the rescue tube and the backboard and a first aid kit. We'll take a look at the safety conditions around your facility. Again, checking for cracks and holes inside the pool, any trip hazards, any kind of safety issue that we see. And if your facility has bathrooms, we check to make sure that you provide hand soap for your guests. And we'll also go over your daily records to make sure you're doing daily checks for chlorine and pH and checking your alkalinity at least once per week. We'll also make sure that you have a copy of your license and that it is up to date. When we receive a complaint, we do go out on the same day usually to do an inspection. We have 24 hours to come to your facility and do an inspection when we receive complaints. And our routine inspections are random. We can come at any time, basically. If your license is up and your pool is open, we can come and inspect it. So if you take a look at this picture here, we can see that the deck drains are not visible. So if I saw a pool like this, I would definitely be shutting it down immediately. Speaking of that though, these are all of the reasons that we would close a facility. If there's a gate that doesn't latch properly, again, the control of access, or if there's any way a child could get in without supervision. The water clarity, if we can't see the bottom or the main drain. If there's an absence of all of the life-saving equipment, like you don't have a shepherd's hook and you don't have a ring buoy. When we test the water, if your chlorine is low or there's no sanitizer in there at all, we'll shut down the pool. Any safety or health risks, we considered the pumps not running, like there's no water circulation going on in your pool. We can close your pool for that as well. And again, the spas, if the temperature is over 104 degrees. If your pool does require lifeguards and there's no lifeguards present when we're there, then we'll shut down the pool as well. If the pool is closed by us, only we can reopen it. We'll post our sign, our pool closed sign, and that needs to stay up. Only we can take those signs down. Here's some examples of some safety issues that could possibly close your pool. On the top left one, we have a pool drain with the cover taken off. An exposed drain like that is a big safety risk. Again, that's the Virginia Graham-Baker Act. Another reason there would be holes in your pool, like again, if you remove the ladder and the little spot where the poles go in is not filled in, or if a pool light gets like popped out, that's considered like exposed wiring and a hole in your pool. And again, like you can see in the top right, this latch locking mechanism isn't really doing anything. It's kind of just open like that. And in the bottom left, that chain link fence, the gate's just wide open, probably just has one of those little swinging latches. And the fence doesn't look like it's 60 inches either. So yeah, a fence like that is not adequate. This pretty much concludes our presentation. Here's some city stats for last year. We had 90% of our inspections did not require closures, but about 50% of the pools didn't have violations. So again, my name is Evelyn Green. I'm the new lead inspector for the city. Right now, during summertime, we have Tori Venata and Jim Weber as our other pool inspectors. If you have any questions or concerns, or you need any information at all, we're here to help. We can be reached at 316-268-8333 or by emailing us at pool-inspectors@wichita.gov. Thank you very much.